Tucked away in a dusty archive, there's a chilling vision from the man they called the Sleeping Prophet, America's most documented psychic, Edgar Cayce. While in a trance-like state, he claimed to see a future where the great cities of Los Angeles and San Francisco would be utterly destroyed. He foresaw a catastrophe so immense that the very earth would be broken up in the western part of America, essentially wiping California off the map. But here's the twist that has researchers buzzing. His prophecies didn't just point to a disaster, they pointed to a timeline, a specific sequence of events, and he warned that the signs of this cataclysm aren't in some distant future. They're happening right now. So what did Cayce really see? What were the warning signs he laid out? And why is this century-old prophecy suddenly gaining so much traction? What you're about to hear is a story of destruction, yes, but it's also a story of hope and a strange warning that connects our past to a future that seems to be unfolding faster than anyone expected. The prophecy was alarmingly specific. The earth will split in two, and the ocean will swallow what's left. These are the haunting words of Edgar Cayce, spoken nearly 100 years ago and mostly dismissed as fantasy. Today, though, they've taken on a chilling new relevance. The Sleeping Prophet saw a level of devastation in California so complete that it would literally redraw the map of the United States, with huge swaths of land vanishing beneath the waves. Now, for years, skeptics rightly pointed to his timeline. Cayce suggested these massive earth changes would happen between 1958 and 1998. So, when 1998 came and went without California taking a dip in the Pacific, many followers were disappointed, and critics chalked it up as another failed prediction. But his modern believers argue this was a huge misunderstanding. They don't see those dates as an expiration, but an activation, the start of a cycle. They argue the warning signs he predicted are now accelerating at a pace that even Cayce himself might not have seen coming. And the most disturbing part? Almost no one is prepared for what that could mean. To feel the full weight of this prophecy, you have to understand the man who gave it. Edgar Cayce wasn't a geologist or a doomsday prepper. He was a humble photographer from rural Kentucky, born in 1877, who taught Sunday school and was a devout Christian. By all accounts, he never wanted fame or money, and was often deeply troubled by the strange ability he seemed to possess. While in a self-induced trance, Cayce could answer questions on almost any topic, from diagnosing illnesses in people he'd never met to speaking about future world events. Over his lifetime, he gave over 14,000 of these readings, which were all transcribed and are still preserved today. His followers credit him with foreseeing some of the 20th century's biggest moments. They claim his readings hinted at the 1929 stock market crash, the rise and fall of Hitler, and even the creation of the State of Israel. He also spoke of 2 American presidents dying in office, a prophecy some connect to the deaths of FDR and JFK. However, let's be real, his record was far from perfect. Many of his predictions were incredibly vague, and skeptics point out that some of his biggest ones were total misses. For instance, he incorrectly predicted that China would convert to Christianity by 1968 and that Jesus would have his second coming in 1998. And, most notably for our story, his warnings about New York, Los Angeles, and San Francisco being destroyed before the end of the 20th century obviously didn't happen. This is the puzzle of Edgar Cayce. Was he a genuine prophet with a few bad calls, or a man simply tapping into the anxieties of his time? His believers have theories, of course. Some say his prophecies were warnings, not fixed fates, and could be changed by human action. Others suggest the events he saw were merely delayed, not cancelled. Regardless, the sheer volume of his work has fascinated people for over a century. He talked about the Earth's magnetic poles shifting decades before it was a hot topic in geophysical research, and his most persistent, terrifying vision was of a world map being violently redrawn, starting with the coast of California. In August 1941, a businessman asked Cayce if it was safe to live in New York, worried about the war. In his trance, Cayce didn't just answer the question, he added something far more terrifying. He stated that cities like Los Angeles and San Francisco would be destroyed before New York ever was. This became the cornerstone of his Earth Changes prophecies. He described a future where the planet would undergo a violent, cleansing series of cataclysms. The epicenter of it all? California. He spoke of the breaking up of the land in the western part of America. His readings painted a grim picture of earthquakes and volcanoes triggering a chain reaction that would cause the California coast to fracture and sink into the Pacific Ocean. He wasn't talking about a slow rise in sea levels. He was describing a sudden, catastrophic collapse. And the vision didn't stop there. He saw this as just the first domino. In other readings, he claimed the Great Lakes would one day empty into the Gulf of Mexico. He warned that the East Coast would be disturbed, and that even parts of New York would eventually be destroyed. Globally, the prophecies got even more dramatic. The greater portion of Japan, he said, must go into the sea. He saw parts of Northern Europe changing in the twinkling of an eye. He even talked about new lands appearing in the Atlantic and Pacific after a shift in the Earth's poles changed the entire climate. Cayce specifically tied these events together. He said that eruptions at Mount Vesuvius in Italy and Mont Pelée in the Caribbean would be signals for massive earthquakes on the southern coast of California. His followers today point to every tremor along the Ring of Fire as a sign that the interconnected cataclysm Cayce described isn't a matter of if, but when. Of course, there's that pesky timeline of 1958 to 1998. Since the world didn't end, it was easy to dismiss his words. But for those who still believe, the failure of that timeline only deepens the mystery and leaves them asking, was it just the beginning of a slow-motion catastrophe that is only now hitting its stride? So let's get right to it. Is any of this actually possible? Can California really split in two and fall into the ocean? According to the United States Geological Survey, USGS, the answer is a clear and simple no. The whole idea is a geological impossibility, born from a misunderstanding of the San Andreas Fault. The San Andreas is a transform fault, where the Pacific Plate and the North American Plate are sliding horizontally past one another. There's no giant chasm opening up for the state to fall into. The motion is sideways, not vertical. As the USGS humorously puts it, California is firmly planted on the top of the Earth's crust. So, case closed? Prophecy debunked? Well, for Cayce's believers, it's not that simple. They argue that while he might have gotten the mechanism wrong, his vision of the outcome, catastrophic destruction, is still very much on the table. After all, California is earthquake country. The San Andreas Fault is perfectly capable of producing a magnitude 8.0 earthquake, the one they call the Big One. The devastation from that would be almost unimaginable. Plus, a massive quake could trigger other events that sound eerily like Cayce's visions. It could cause coastal land to sink in some areas or trigger underwater landslides, creating powerful tsunamis that would absolutely swamp coastal cities. This is where believers find their modern proof. They don't see the prophecy as a literal blueprint. They see it as a psychic vision of an end result, described by a man with no scientific background. In their view, Cayce described what he saw, the land disappearing underwater, in the only way his 1940s mind could process it. He may have gotten the physics wrong, but they think his vision of the destruction was spot on. They point to the constant seismic activity in California as a sign of the immense pressure building along the fault lines. They see global volcanic unrest not as isolated incidents, but as the interconnected signs Cayce warned about. From this perspective, arguing about horizontal versus vertical movement becomes a terrifyingly academic point when the end result is the same: cities in ruins. But if you only focus on the crumbling cities and rising tides, you're missing what Cayce himself said was the whole point. For him, the Earth changes weren't random acts of nature. They were a direct reflection of humanity's spiritual health. He believed the ground beneath our feet responds to the chaos in our hearts and minds. In his readings, Cayce taught that thoughts of anger, division, and greed create a kind of spiritual poison. When that poison builds up, it manifests in the physical world as turmoil, not just as wars, but in the planet itself. He claimed that humanity, by ignoring divine laws, was bringing these destructive forces upon itself. From this viewpoint, California wasn't just a random target, it was a symbol. It represented the peak of human ambition and the material dream. But Cayce also saw it as a place of great spiritual imbalance. The destruction of California, then, wasn't a punishment from an angry God, but a painful, necessary act of rebalancing the scales. This is the strange mix of fear and hope in Cayce's vision. The destruction he saw wasn't the end of the world, but the violent birth pains of a new one. It was a forced reset meant to shake humanity out of its materialistic trance and force a global spiritual awakening. He believed these events would strip away the trivial distractions of modern life and make people remember what really matters. His advice wasn't to run for the hills, but to change how you lived. The prophecies were a call to action, a plea for compassion, humility, and unity. He truly believed that through prayer and a collective shift in consciousness, the worst of these cataclysms could be lessened. The future, in his eyes, was never set in stone. The shaking of the earth was meant to awaken the soul. So here we are, looking back at a century-old prophecy that missed its deadline but still feels unnervingly relevant. On one hand, you have the sleeping prophet and his terrifying vision of America's West Coast being destroyed. On the other, you have the scientific certainty that California isn't going to sink, alongside the equal certainty that a catastrophic earthquake is inevitable. And layered on top of it all is the spiritual warning that these events are tied to us. The 1958 to 1998 timeline has passed. But the question is, are the constant earthquakes, rising seas, and volatile weather we see today the slow-motion unfolding of Cayce's vision? Or are we just projecting ancient fears onto the natural, chaotic cycles of a living planet? What do you think? Was Cayce onto something? Or are his failed predictions proof that it's all just fantasy? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you're fascinated by the strange connections between prophecy, science, and our unfolding reality, make sure to subscribe. We're going to keep exploring these mysteries that connect our past to the future that's already here.
This book is your beginner's guide to understanding Scripture. Find peace, build relationships, and discover purpose in today's world. Ready to decode the Bible? Find Bible Decoded available on Amazon now.
If this content blesses you and you'd like to support our mission, you can buy me a coffee or give a super thanks. Every contribution helps us create more content to inspire and uplift others. Make sure to subscribe so you don't miss out on my future videos.